Hello everyone and welcome back to Code with Beto. In this video, we're going to learn and master Redux RTK query, specifically RTK query, to fetch data and make mutations. So in most cases, when you are dealing with data that is not in your application, that is not local data, for example, let's say we have a to-do application and you need to fetch some data and then allow the user to update those to-dos and then delete to-dos, and everything needs to be in sync with the database in the backend. It's very challenging to implement that without using any tool, right? We have a couple tools that we can use, and RTK query is one of the best that we can use to handle these kind of situations. RTK query is going to allow us to keep our code clean and concise, easy to understand, easy to scale. In this video, we're going to learn as well how to create our own backend. We're going to create a simple Express.js application to handle the requests that we're going to be playing with into our React Native application. Now, I also want to mention that we're going to be doing this into a React Native application, but this is going to work as well on any React application. Either you are using Vite or Next.js, you can integrate the same knowledge from this video into your application. I'm sure that this video is going to help you a lot. And if you like this video and if you find it helpful, if you want to support this channel, you can subscribe, give it a like, and also you can become a member today to access top quality exclusive videos just for you. Now, before we start, guys, if you want to truly become a master in React and React Native, go to codewithbeto.dev and check out the courses that we have there. We have a course for React Native and we have a course for React with TypeScript that we are developing, and we have a nice promotion at the moment. So if you're interested, if you want to support this channel, this community, go to codewithbeto.dev today. And now that being said, let's start with this awesome video. Alrighty guys, so I want to start this video by explaining a little bit why we need RTK query. Now, like I mentioned before, you need to be a little bit familiar with Redux already, Redux Toolkit, and you can check out my course at codewithbeto.dev. We have an application using, for example, React or React Native, it doesn't really matter. Let's say that this is a to-do application and we have a list of to-dos, right? Now, when we are working locally with this data, this is great because we can handle the state and everything is local. We don't have to worry about saving this into a database or fetching these to-dos. The complexity starts when you want to, for example, click on one of these to-dos, and one of these to-dos should take you to another screen. And in this screen, you should see like details for this specific to-do, right? Now here you can see like the title and the content of this to-do. Now at this point, we are in another screen, right? Now what happens if the user decides to edit? Let's say that we have this edit button, and when the user changes something here and then goes back to the list of to-dos, the user should see that this change has reflected on this screen, right? Now, this is what Redux Toolkit solves locally. And you can create like a to-do app or whatever state you need to handle and share that state across screens and components. You can do it with Redux Toolkit. Now, like I mentioned before, the complexity starts when you need to, for example, have multiple screens, right? So for example, you have a button down here, and this button, when you press it or when the user press it, you have another screen. And this screen is going to allow you to add to-dos, right? Now you need to have an input and then like a submit. Now, if you pay attention now, when you submit a new to-do, you should be able to come back to the screen and see the same to-do, right? The new to-do at the top of the list. So to handle this locally, we can use RTK, Redux Toolkit, we can use Context API, we can use other libraries that are open source available on internet, like Sod, for example. But the issue, like I mentioned before, starts when you have to deal with a server or with an API, or you need to save this information for a specific user in a database. Now, let's say that we have a server well, this is my server, and the server, of course, is going to be connected to a database. So this is going to be my database, and I need to handle everything on the server, right? So whenever I need to show the to-dos to the user, I would need to create a GET request. When I need to create a new to-do, I would need to create a POST request. When I need to edit, I would need to create a patch or a put request to the server. And every time the server is going to handle these operations, right? In the server, we need to have the business logic. But what happens at this point, the complexity has increased a lot, because whenever you create a to-do, the server needs to validate the data and then save that to the database or get data from the database. And this is like a whole system that the client is not even touching at this point, right? Once the operation is complete, we are going to get a response back with the data. And now in the client or in the React Native application or React application, whatever you're using, you need to handle this new information. For example, let's say that something went wrong and the to-do wasn't created, or the post, it wasn't successfully created. At this point, we shouldn't be able to see the new to-do here, right? So we should be able to handle these gracefully, like showing an alert to the user saying that something went wrong. It would be better if you show to the user like an alert saying that it's an error related to the input, or maybe it's an error related to the internet connection, or it's just an internal server error. It would be great, but as long as you handle this request gracefully, for example, if everything went well, we should be able to see the new to-do, because at this point we know that we are in sync with the server and in sync with the database. Now, to handle everything on the client, it's a little bit complex, especially, for example, if you are handling, this state locally. Now, this is where RTK query can help us. RTK query allows us to perform operations to APIs or to endpoints or to the server, right? And it's going to allow us to have the state in sync with our application. So let me create the UI application. And the way we do this is by abstracting this state or this information, as well as the operations that we need to perform to the server. So we have the server and we have the DB. These are going to be connected. And then using RTK query, so I'm going to say RTK here. Here is where we are going to define the operations that we are going to be performing with the API or with the server, like getting information, putting, deleting. Now, the great advantage of this is that RTK is going to handle errors. RTK is going to handle loading states. RTK is going to handle successful states, like everything went well, here's the information. And the cool thing about this is that we can have multiple screens for this UI. For example, let's say that we have a list of to-dos, and then this list is going to have like the details screen, right? And then from the details screen, we can have the update screen. So we can update and we don't need to worry about sharing the state with the list every time that we update, for example. Or if we go back to the details, we should be able to see the new update, right? Or if we have like another screen, for example, to create to-dos, we should be able to come back to the list and see everything. So RTK is going to allow us to keep everything in sync, basically. And the cool thing as well about RTK is that we can communicate directly to the state from any component. So for example, when I create something, I'm going to grab my get query from RTK and I'm going to call it on this component. And then RTK is going to update the entire UI. So basically every single component that is going to be wrapped into the RTK provider is going to have access to this state, and every single component is going to be aware of errors, loading state, and successful states, right? Now, having that in mind, let's jump into the code and start implementing this. Alrighty guys, so here we are into our project on VS Code, and we're gonna be using a React Native application. Now, like I mentioned before in the introduction, it doesn't really matter if you are working with React Native or just a React application using bare React or Beat or Next.js. You can integrate RTK query as we are going to do it here in the same way, and it should work as well. All right, cool. Now this application is an application that I've been using for some tutorials, and you can check them out in the channel. So I'm going to bring here the channel. By the way, thank you to the members that have joined the channel. I really appreciate you guys. And this application actually we created, well, we've been using this application for some cool stuff related to members only videos. So if you want to become a member and support this channel, it would be great if you join. You are going to have access to for tutorials, premium tutorials like how to integrate push notifications with one signal, how to sign in with Apple with Firebase backend. Also how to drag and drop. This is a tutorial for Next.js and very cool stuff. And I'm going to keep improving and keep uploading more top quality resources. But I just wanted to mention, guys, that if you are curious about how we integrated sign in with Apple or sign in with Google, you can check out these videos in the channel as well. Now that being said, let's go back to the code base. And just to talk a little bit about this application, this is a React Native Expo application that is using Expo Router, as you can see here. That's why we have this file-based routing system, which basically it's very simple actually. It means that everything inside this app folder is going to have a routing into the application. So for example, the out slot that you can see here, it's basically this screen that we are seeing on the right side, and the tabs, it's like another slot of navigation or routing that is going to allow us to, well, that is what the user is going to see once they are authenticated. All right. And then we also have like missing screen. For example, if the user, it didn't enter like a valid route, we have this missing screen and this modal screen and layout. So the important thing to keep in mind here, if you are not familiar with Expo Router, is that the entry point for this application is going to be this layout. All right. And inside this layout, if I scroll down, you can see that we have these components. All right. Now, if you want to learn more, now as you can see here, we have actually some providers. And if you are not familiar with providers, I would highly encourage you guys to go to codewithbeto.dev and check out the new React with TypeScript course. In this course, we learn a lot about state management. Actually, we learn about Redux Toolkit. If you want to become more familiar with Redux Toolkit before you jump into RTK query, I would highly encourage you to check out this course. I believe it's going to help you. Also, we check substant and local storage and other tools like use context to share state across the application. Also, of course, don't forget to check out the React Native course. Very, very complete course. We also talk a little bit about Redux in the state management section, as you can see here. Let me make this a little bigger. We have a use context as well and Redux Toolkit. So check it out, guys. This is just, one tip of the iceberg. This course is very complete, and I know that it's going to help you. So go to Code with Beto and check it out. So yeah, once you are familiar with providers, you may notice, or you already know, that these providers are going to be wrapping the application or whatever we are rendering at this point, which is this slot. So this slot, It's basically a component placeholder that is going to render either the auth or tabs based on the authentication of the users. So if the user is not authenticated, we're going to render auth, which is what we're seeing here. So let's go ahead and sign in with GitHub. I'm going to continue, and there we go. So if I go to my profile, you can see that I have my information there. Cool, so this is working fine. And let's go back to home screen. We don't have anything here. But yeah, so now at this point, we are seeing the tabs flow, right? So the tabs route. And inside the tabs, we also have a layout, which is the entry point where we are defining the screens that we are seeing here. Okay, good enough to understand, right? So the first thing that I want to do is actually go ahead and install some things that we're going to need, like Redux and Redux Toolkit. So let's go ahead and open the terminal, and let me clear this. You can see this is running. Now I'm going to open a new terminal, and let's drag all the way to the left. The first dependency that we are going to install is going to be Redux Toolkit. And if you check this out, I have a yarn.log, which means I'm using yarn to install dependencies. So I'm just going to run this command, yarn add Redux Toolkit. And as well, we are going to need React Redux. So let's go ahead and paste React Redux here. Let me just drag this here so you can see that we have these two, right? React Redux, and we're going to install these two dependencies at the same time. So I'm going to hit enter. Alrighty, that's it. I'm going to close this terminal and close this terminal as well. We don't need it at the moment. Now, the cool thing about this is that inside this, so let's go to the package.json and search for Redux. So inside this Redux toolkit package, we have also RTK query that allows us to, start handling this fetching stuff. Okay, now let's do something cool before we actually start integrating Redux. We are going to need an API, right? We're going to need like a server or something to fetch data and save information about the users. Now I want to create a list of posts, and I want to allow my user as well to create posts, delete posts, update posts, all right? And I want to handle everything with Redux Toolkit, with RTK query, and I want to handle that and save that on a server. So to do that, let's go ahead and create a new folder. And I'm going to create this folder in the root. And this folder is going to be called Backend. Okay, so I'm going to create a backend, and this is a really good learning opportunity as well if you are not familiar with how everything is handled on a server. I'm going to create a Express server, very simple stuff, so don't worry. And this is great for testing as well. If you want to skip to the next chapter of this video, and also if you want to skip this part, if you are not interested in the backend, just want to know how to handle the API, you are welcome to skip this part. Alrighty guys, so the first thing that I want to do is create a new file inside my backend, right? So this is going to be my backend. Although it's inside my front-end code, right? But this is a very simple backend, and it's a good idea to have the what we saw here, the difference between the server and the UI in our head, right? So although this is going to be here in the same code base, it's a good idea to imagine it like in another computer or in another place. Anyways, let's create a new file, and this file is going to be my index dot, and I'm going to be using JS. All right, this is going to be my server. Now, this backend is going to be, like another project. So I'm going to open my terminal, and then I'm going to create a new terminal. And in this terminal, I'm going to cd into this backend. I'm going to clear. And now that I'm inside this, this folder, because this is a new project, I'm going to initialize a new npm project. So I'm going to say yarn init and then hit enter. Now we are going to basically create a project that is going to allow us to install dependencies with npm and all that, right? Now we need a name. So I'm gonna name this, I don't know, my backend, hit enter. Version is going to be 1, description. This is a simple backend, right? Now this is just information that it's good to have in your package JSON. The entry point, as you can see here, is going to be index.js, which is the file that I created. If you want to change that, for example, to be main.js, you can do that and then rename it here. But now I'm going to hit enter because it's index.js. If you have a repository, you can put it here. I don't want to do this. Author is going to be Beto, or maybe code with Beto. Hit enter. License MIT, this is open source, and that's it. All right, now if you pay attention, we have now this package JSON inside this backend folder, which means this is we can go ahead and install some dependencies here. So the first dependency that I'm going to install is going to be Express. Express, guys, if you are not familiar with Express, it's a very simple library that allows us to have a server, right? Now let's go ahead and go to the index.js. And the first thing that we need to do is actually import Express. So I'm going to say Express equal to require, and then I'm going to require Express. This is how we do it. Now let's initialize this application by saying Express. All right. So Express is going to allow us to handle, get, post, put, request. We need to specify as well a port. Now, regularly we use the 3000 or 8080. It doesn't really matter what port you want to use. I'm going to be using the 3000 port. Okay, cool. And basically that's all the configuration we need for this application. Now I can actually access the instance of Express, which is this app, and say use. And I'm going to use express.json. So what this line is going to do is basically help me to parse the JSON that we're going to get from the client. So every time that we, let's say, create a new post, we are going to send a JSON as a string, right? And we're going to be handling JSON. So this line is going to be in charge of that. Now, we need like a database, right? Now, of course, we're not going to be connecting to an external database or a cloud database. What I'm going to do instead, it's a very simple database. I'm going to call this my database, which is going to be an empty array. Now, this empty array is going to contain a list of posts that we are going to be handling from the client side. So we don't have anything here at the moment, but you can imagine that we're going to have something like ID string, string of 1 maybe, then, or this could be a number actually. Then we can have like an author, the person who created this post, for example, Beto, and then content of this post, and the content could be my first post. And then we could have something like created at and updated at, which are fields that you often are going to see on, items, right? Cool. So yeah, this is how one of these posts is going to look. My database is going to contain this list, and we're going to be performing operations on this array. Okay. Now, this is going to live as long as my server is running. So if my server stops, we're going to lose the data, okay? So just keep that in mind. If we were to use a database, we can be sure that this data is going to be persisted. But in this point, it's just a dummy backend, okay? Okay, now that we have the idea, let's actually go ahead and delete this post because I don't want anything at the moment. All right, and let's go ahead and create a new handler. So if I say app, Then I can start accessing methods like get, delete, put, patch, update, and stuff like that. Okay, so the first handler that I want is going to be a get. Now we need to specify the name of this endpoint. This is going to be the base URL, so I'm just going to put a slice, and then we need to pass like a function that is going to be handling this. So this is an arrow function, and this arrow function is going to get the request and the response. Okay, now we're using JavaScript, so we're not worrying about the types of these two things. But at this point, what I want to do is just simply return a response as JSON. So I'm going to say JSON, and then pass whatever I want to return, which is my database, which in other words, it's my list of to-dos or posts, right? We're going to be handling posts. Okay, this is going to be my first route. And now let's go ahead and start the server by saying app.listen. And then we need to pass the port that we want to listen. So I'm going to pass my port. If you remember, this is the variable that we created on top, port 3000. So after the port, we need to pass a callback function or an arrow function that is going to, run when this is running. So when this is running, I actually want to have something on the console to let me know that this is working. So I'm going to say example app listening on port 3000. Okay. And if I hit save, we should be able to now run this backend. Okay. How we can run this by saying node and then passing the name of the file that we want to run inside this backend folder. And if I hit enter, you can see that my application is running on port 3000. Now, the simple way to test this out is just by going to the website localhost 3000. And as you can see, this is working because we are returning an empty array. But for example, if I were to add something here like we did before, ID1, and then author beto, just for now, hit save. And we would need to actually rerun this backend application. Once we rerun, if we go to the browser and we reload, we have this data, which means our API is working. Great. Now let's close this out. And actually, I want to show you guys a way to test this without having to open the browser. So let's go ahead and create a new terminal. Now this terminal could be anywhere. We could be inside this folder, or we could be in the main route, whatever, it doesn't really matter. And the way we can test this out is by using curl. If you are not familiar with curl, basically allows us to make requests from the terminal by saying http://localhost 3000 and hit enter. As you can see, we get the data here, which means this is working and we were able to test this application right away, right? Of course, this is not very pretty, but let's say that we want to test this quickly. Of course, remember that we need to be reloading this server every time that we make a change, but this is working just fine. And this is a quicker way and a pro way to do this, okay? So let's keep this terminal open for now, and let's now take a break from this terminal. I'm going to close it and I'm going to delete this. Well, let's leave this data for now so that we can know that this is working. Cool. So let's quickly move now to the front end. Now to move to the front end, let's change terminal so that we are not confused. Okay. We are in the front end at this point. And now what I want to do on the front end is maybe create a fetch request just to see if this is working. Let's go to the tabs. Inside the tabs, we have this index, which is the tab 1. And let's quickly test this out by creating an async function. And this function is going to call get post. Okay, we don't need parameters. This function is going to create the fetch request. So we can say const response equal to await fetch. I'm going to fetch to the local host. So let's quickly go and copy this endpoint, close this, paste it here. And all right, this is how it looks. This is our endpoint for our API, right? Let me minimize this. Okay, now this is a very simple fetch. Now this is going to return a string, right? We need to abstract the JSON. So to abstract this data, we can say response, .json. And we need to, of course, await this. Okay. Now, to see if this is working, maybe we can have a variable here called post and set post using useState from React. Okay, and then once we have this data, we can say set post, passing the data, which should be an array. And then from here, we can, maybe we can just iterate over the post. So let's say .map. For each post, we are going to, well, this is an array. That's why we are not getting auto-completion here. Now if I say map, okay. Now we're going to iterate for each post. And for each post, I want to render a text. And this text is going to be just a post. Actually, I don't remember. Okay, post.author, which is what we have at the moment. So if I hit save and open the terminal, let's go to the client. All right. Cool. So this is working, but we are not calling this function actually. So let's create quickly a use effect. And we are starting to see the pain of handling, this fetch request on specific components. So we need at this point 2 hooks, and my code is getting large and large. So I'm gonna say get post here and hit save. Okay, and as you can see, I have a warning, but we can see the 2 authors that we are getting from our backend, which means this is working. But of course, as well, this is showing us that handling this kind of stuff directly in here, it's a pain. Okay, so that's why we need to use Redux RTK Query to handle this fetching. So let's go ahead and delete all this code that we don't really want. Let's delete this as well, delete this, everything. If we have less code, it's better actually, okay? Cool. So yeah, there we have it. Now, let's actually start integrating Redux to handle this for us, okay? Let's go ahead and outside of this app, I'm going to create another folder. So let's create this folder, and this folder is going to be called services. Why services? Well, it's a convention that I saw by the creator of Redux and maintainer. So yeah, we should name it services. And the idea is that inside this folder, you are going to have not only maybe this endpoint, maybe your application needs to handle, maybe the same endpoint, but different things like users, post, and stuff like that. So inside these services, we are going to define these pieces of state that are going to be handling or hitting these endpoints, and we can abstract this into a couple services or whatever the number of services you need. Like I mentioned, it could be users, it could be posts, it could be to-dos, it could be whatever you need. Okay, so let's create a new file inside services, and I'm going to call this one post.ts. Okay, we're using TypeScript, remember? And yeah, this is going to be my service. Okay, so this is it. This is where we define the logic of our fetching with Redux Toolkit. And the first thing that I want to do is import from, and I'm going to import here Redux Toolkit. Now, if you put a slash here, you can see that we have query and other stuff, but we're going to be using query. And because we're using React as well, we can say React. Okay. And from here, we are going to import create API and fetch base query. Alrighty. Yeah. Okay, now this is a great point or way a great point to stop and start thinking about what data we're going to be handling. And to don't make this very complicated, I'm going to create an interface, or it could be a type. So I'm going to create a type called post type. And this is going to be equal to the type, right? So the ID is going to be a number. Then we're going to have an author of type string. Then we're going to have the content, which is going to be a string as well. Created at, should be a string, I guess, and updated at string as well. Cool, so this is going to be our type, and we're going to be using this. And of course, this needs to be uppercase. Post type, hit save. All right, this is the structure of data that we're going to be handling. Down here, we need to actually create this API. So we can simply say export const. I'm going to call this post API equal to, and here we're going to call create API from Redux. I'm going to minimize my Explorer so that we can see better. Now, create API is going to take an object of, fields to configure this API. The first one is going to be the reducer path. So the path is going to be post, just like that. Okay, this is like the name for this API. Then we can define a lot of things. And if I just put my autocomplete, you can see that we have a bunch of stuff that we can define here. And we're going to touch some of these. Now I'm going to say base query. And this is very important, guys. Base query is going to be like the base endpoint for the query. All right. So in here, I'm going to say fetch base query, which is actually this function that we're importing here. This is a very small wrapper around fetch that aims to simplify request. That's all. All right. Cool. So we have this fetch, and inside this, we can do simpler things like defining the base URL. And my base URL is going to be, if you remember, http://localhost 3000. This is my base URL. Now you may have here, for example, API version 1. This could be like your base URL, but in our case, this is very simple. Alrighty. Now, apart from this, we can have something like prepare headers. This function prepare headers, it's going to allow us to set the headers that we need to handle these requests. And for example, here I can say headers set, and something that I want to set actually is going to be the content type that we're going to be handling through this request. And the content type is going to be application JSON, right? Okay, now why is this red? It is because I think we need to also specify some endpoints, right? And endpoints, this is going to actually return a callback function that is going to allow us to declare some endpoints. So for example, we could have something like posts, we could have something like users, and those are going to be endpoints, right? And based on those endpoints, we want to perform operations like creating, getting, updating, and stuff like that. Cool. Now, before we jumped into the endpoints, I just wanted to mention, guys, that here you can have more things like a body, like a body, for example, and yeah, stuff like that that you can have in the headers. For example, if you need to handle authentication or send your token to the backend to authenticate your application, you can do that in the headers as well. So in the headers, you can do set again, and then in this point, you can have something like authorization, and authorization is going to have a maybe barrier token, and here you would have your token. Authorization, and this needs to be a string, I believe. Yeah. So yeah, this could be like a great point to have the token. And from here, you could actually access the token if you want. Now, if you're wondering how you can get your token here, because most of the time this is going to be like secret, right? Or this is going to come from once the user authenticates, you're going to have here some token variable. So the way you can do this is actually inside these prepared headers. What you can do is say something like const token, and this is going to be equal to get state. And this get state, we can say that this is going to be equal to root state. And of course, we haven't touched this, but basically we can grab the state from Redux, and here we could have something like auth.token, and this is how you would access the token to pass it here, right? Okay, but we are not handling authentication at this point. I just wanted to mention that. All right, so let's move on to the endpoints. Once we have the base URL and the headers that we're gonna be using, we can use this builder function to build the endpoints that we're going to be handling. So this builder function is going to take a builder here, and this builder basically is going to allow us to create the queries for this endpoint, okay? So let's get into this function. And we need to start defining the first query that we're gonna be using. So let's name this one find all posts. And so what I want to do here is use this builder that we are getting here to build this query. And this builder, the only thing that it does is actually allowing us to use a query or a mutation. Query is to get data, mutation is to mutate data, right? So if we want to create something, that is a mutation. If we want to delete something, that is a mutation as well. So in this case, we want to just find all post. So this is going to be a query. And then here we need to pass a generic type. And if you want to learn more about generic types and in TypeScript, I would highly encourage you guys to go to codewithbeto.dev and check out the React with TypeScript course. We learn about generics, classes, and everything about TypeScript fundamentals, which I think is going to help you a lot. Okay, so we need to pass this generic type, and then we can actually specify some things inside this function or this query, like the query, for example. So the query, it's going to be just the endpoint that we are hitting here. Now, but the important thing to keep in mind here is that inside this type, we need to specify the parameters that we're going to pass to this query. So for example, we could get this for, for ID. I'm going to delete the slash. So we would need to pass the ID for this query, right? Now, this is why we need this generic. So we are not going to pass nothing as parameter. So I'm going to put any, but we are going to get something, right? So the result actually is going to be the first parameter, and the second one is going to be the query argument. So the second one is going to be the any because we are not going to pass anything. But the first one is going to be what this query is going to return, the type. So we're going to return a list of posts, right? So I'm going to use my post type and say that this query is going to return an array of posts. And we are not getting anything. I'm wondering if I can just do a underscore. Nope. I'm just gonna say any for now. All right, and then if we were to pass something here, we could actually access this inside these parentheses, but for now, let's just leave this like that and see what happens. Alrighty, so that wasn't too bad, right? So let's recap a little bit. We import created API, fetch base query, declare the type that we're going to be handling, which is the post, then name the reducer path, create this fetch and prepare the headers. So the base URL is going to be the localhost 3000, and then preparing headers, just saying the content type is going to be JSON, very simple. Then prepare one endpoint. The first one is going to be find all posts, which is going to be just here, right? This is the endpoint that is going to get me the post. We could have something like slash and then change this to be post like that. And we can leave it like that and then change our backend. But yeah, once we have this, we can export const this post API. So the cool thing about this is that we can have this hook called find all post query. So where this is coming? Well, if you remember, we named this find all post. So RTK query is creating this hook for us so that we can use it on any component we want to use this query. Very cool, right? So let's hit save. And yeah, so this is our query. This wasn't too bad so far. Let's go ahead and do some extra things that we need to do. So we need to specify a store. Now, to be able to use this, we need to create a provider so that we can provide this hook to our application. Now, the way we do that is just creating a store. So we need to create actually a folder called app, but we already have one. So I'm going to say app Redux. And inside this folder, I'm going to create a new file. And this file is going to be called store.ts. Cool. So pretty simple so far. From here, we need to import configure store. From here, we need to import from Redux Toolkit configure store. So configure store. Then let's export this store equal to configure store, which is the function that allows us to configure this. Then let's specify the reducer. So the reducer is going to be the post API. And this is going to take an object because we can have many reducers. We're having just one at this point. But yeah, this is very easy to do. Now we need to import, if you remember guys, we exported this hook, but as well, we exported this post API. So we need to import this post API here from my services post, right? Now in here, I'm going to say post API.reducer path, and this is going to map to the post API.reducer. Okay, cool. This is the configuration that we need to do just once. Don't worry. Once you have this, it's done. Now, we need to add as well something called middleware. Having a middleware allows us to enable caching, invalidation, and other useful features like that come with RTK query. The primary one is caching, right? So if we cache the response from the API, we are doing less requests to the endpoint, which means less money that our company or you have to spend because you don't have to handle a lot of requests because we are caching on the front end or on the client side. And to define this middleware, we can simply use this get default middleware. Well, this is going to be a function, and this function is going to return the get default middleware. Now I'm going to copy this and paste it here, and then say .concat, and we need to add to the default middleware the post API.middleware, and that's it. This is how we configure it. Okay, because we only have one, that's why we have this in one line, but we could have a return here, I think. But yeah, anyways, because we only have one, we can do this like that. Because we're doing this in one line of code, we can return this implicitly. But if we have more of this, you can return an object and then say return get default middleware. And then you can return this. So let me Let me copy this and paste it here. And from here, you can concat whatever you need. So let's say that you have more. You can simply duplicate and concatenate and just, yeah. Let's say that you have, multiple, you can have whatever you need here and add caching and all that and all those cool features. Okay, so let's just leave it like that for easy reading. Now, because we are using TypeScript, we need to export the root state type. The root state type is going to be the type that we're going to be handling in the store. So we can simply say export type root state, that's a name, and I'm going to say return type and passing a generic, which is going to be type of store.getState. Now this getState is a function that we were calling previously here. So for example, if you have something inside this like token or user token, something like that, you can access this inside the headers by saying getState. And yeah, you can check out the documentation if you are more curious about it. Anyways, we're using this store getState. And from here, we are inferring the type so that we are able to type everything on our components. Cool. Now let's export as well. And this is basically the type of the dispatch, right? So I'm going to say type of store.dispatch. Cool. If you want to learn more about what is dispatch, what is, inferring types, again, guys, I would highly encourage you to check out my React with TypeScript course or my React native course. If you want to learn TypeScript, go for React with TypeScript. If you want to learn the basics of React Native, check out the React Native course. Okay, anyways, once we have this store ready, it wasn't too hard, right? It was pretty easy. Cool. Now we just need to pass this to our application so that we are able to use this. Okay, so how can we do that? If you remember, because we are using export router, this is the layout. That is the entry point for my application. So this is the perfect point to wrap my application, because inside these providers, we're going to have access, well, anything that we are rendering here is going to have access to the Redux state. So let's go ahead and import here. So let's import provider from React Redux and also import the store from the app Redux store. Okay, this is our store. You can see that we are inferring the type, which is working fine. Okay, so let's use this provider. And actually a cool thing that you can do here, it's say that we want to import this as Redux provider. Basically, we are changing the name so that we know that this provider is from Redux. Let's copy this and wrap our application. All right. Now we are getting a warning because we need to pass a store to this component. So I'm going to say store equal to my store. And if I hit save, now just like that, we are able to access our queries and everything inside our application. Cool, no? Cool, right? Cool. This is all we needed here. Now what we can do is actually do whatever we need. This is all the configuration we need for now. Let's go to the tabs index, which is our tab 1, where we were fetching using use state and use effect, and it was pretty ugly. And now we can simply use, if you remember, we have this use find all post query. So let's go ahead and use that hook. Use find all post query from my services. Now here, guys, I'm getting an error because if you remember, we said that we were going to get a value any here. So I can pass anything here and the error should go away. But actually, instead of having any, I just Googled that we can have void, and because we are not going to pass anything, so that we don't need to pass anything here. and we can use this hook just like that. Okay, so now here, what I want to do is actually get all this cool stuff that gives me this hook. Like for example, is loading, like for example, data, like for example, error, like for example, is success, is fetching, is error, whatever you need of these things that you can see here, you can use them. But the most common things that you're gonna be using is going to be data, is loading, or error. And now from there, you can render stuff here. Now I can simply go ahead and do whatever I was doing before with the data. So I'm going to say data dot map, and then for each to do, I'm going to render one of these text, and the text is going to say to do dot, and here is the true magic. I can see the type of my content. So everything is fully typed. So I'm going to just put the content for now and hit save. Of course, this is not going to work. Let's see the console. I'm thinking that we have some errors here. Okay, we don't have nothing. But this is not going to work, guys, because if you remember, in our backend, still running, but we made some changes, right? So let's go to the backend quickly. I'm going to go to my index. And if you remember, we changed this to be post. We are hitting post in here on the post API. This is the endpoint that we're hitting. So actually I have an extra slash here. So I'm going to hit post. So once we hit post, we should be able to hit this and basically return whatever we had. But now another thing is that this is not, this does not has the content that we are rendering here because we have this type, right? So let's go ahead and maybe just add these fields that we are missing and change this to be content test. We need a comma here and created add, updated add. I think we can leave those as null for now. Cool. So let's restart the server. Let me just say Control C, node index. This is running again. And let's try to reload the application. Okay. Cool. So we have content test, which means this is working and we are fetching the data with Redux. That is amazing, right? So we have content test, and actually we can do, I don't know, maybe just say to do dot author, which should be beto. Okay, and there we have it. So this is working just great. Now, a cool thing about this, guys, is that we can do something like if is loading, we can return a text that says loading. And maybe I can copy this style and paste it here. Okay. Alrighty, so let's reload. Now, so to be able to see this loading state in our screen, we can go to the index and set a timeout for 3 seconds. So I'm going to say 3000, and then after that send the result. So let's stop and run the server again and reload the application. Okay, and we have a loading up there, as you can see, and 3 seconds later we are able to see the result. Now this warning is because I didn't provide a key here. So I'm going to say that the key is going to be equal to do ID. There we go. Cool. So yeah, this is how it works, guys. Now, if you want to handle the error, you can do so as well. If error, actually, I can just duplicate this and say error and change this to be error. Now, if we go back here and actually say throw new error, we should be able to see the error, I believe. So let's go ahead and reload. Okay, it's loading. And 3 seconds later, content test. So this worked. I don't know why. Oh yeah, this worked because I didn't restart the server. Okay, so I restart the server, reload, 3 seconds, and then we should see an error. Okay, and there we have it. Of course, we are not seeing anything because this is not centered. What we can do for now maybe is just, I don't know, having like this inside this component. But if you can see on the top left, we have this error. And also the backend break, as you can see. So let's go to the backend and remove this error. Now we have validated that this is working. Let me restart the server. Alrighty guys, so I just wrapped this text into the container so that it's centered. And let's try to reload the app. Okay, we have the loading for 3 seconds and then we load the data. Now, the cool thing about this, guys, is that this response is cache, which means if the user goes away and comes back, this is going to be here, which is great. We don't need to be fetching every single moment. Now, let's actually change now this backend, right? Because at the moment we only have this, simple get handler, and we have, like all this logic just for one handler. So we need to make an update here. So let's go ahead and add a post, right? So we have a get. Now let's use a post, and the base is going to be post as well. So I mean the route, and then we can get the request and the response from this callback and just handle this post. Now, when we are posting a new a new post, we're going to get this data, right? Author, content, created at, and of course, we are just going to get these two, author and content, and the ID is going to be handled on the backend, as well as the created at and updated at. Then the only thing that I want to do after I get this from the request, it's going to be, say, my dv.push, and I'm going to push this new post. All right, and this is going to look like this. And then finally, we need to send a response to the client, right? So the status of this response is going to be actually 201, which means something was created. And then let's return the thing that was created, which is the new post as JSON, right? That's why we have this JSON. Hit save. And now, just like that, we are able to post. We should be able to post. Now, I don't want to come back again to this backend. So let's go ahead and create a put and delete handler. So down here, I'm just going to create this put. It's very similar to what we have here, but in this case, if you pay attention, we are handling a parameter that we expect the client to send, which is the ID of the post that we want to update, right? So from the request, we are grabbing the parameters and the ID, and we are transforming this to integer so that we can find the index in the database using the find index using the post ID. Once we have the index, we are going to check if it's greater than -1. The reason for that is because when we use find index, this is going to return the index of the first element in the array where the predicate is true. Otherwise, it's going to return -1. So in other words, if we don't find it, it's -1. So if it's -1, we're going to return status 404, post not found, and otherwise we are going to position ourselves in the index of this post and then replace the body or whatever fields the user sent, replaced those, and then update the updated at to be the new update. Okay, very simple stuff. Then we have the delete, and here we need to receive as well the ID of the post we want to delete. So actually I'm missing an S here, post, right? Because this is our base URL. Cool. All right, everything is working fine. Now, once we have the ID, we are going to search for the ID as well. And if we find it, we're going to delete it from the database and then send the post or just the message that we deleted that post. Okay, so the client needs to handle everything else. Okay, so let's hit save and let's restart the server. I'm going to stop, clear, and run again node index. Okay, so my server is running, it's working fine. Now we should be able to create these operations into our super database. Okay, so let's go back to well, here we have the data. I want to delete actually this tab one. Let's just have the to-dos here. Let's go to the post handler. And here we need to create more handlers, right? More endpoints with the builder. All right, so let's go ahead and create one called create post. This create post is going to use the builder dot mutation because we are creating something, right? Now we are going to receive. Now the query for creating a post, it's going to return a string. So the query for creating a post, it's going to return a post, right? So we should say that we are going to get a post type here. And we are going to pass as well a post type. Although we are not really going to pass the ID or the created and updated ad. We are just going to pass the author and content. So I guess a better way to do this would be passing, creating another type or simply creating a destructure type. If this is something new to you, I would encourage you to check my React with TypeScript course. And basically what we can do here is just copy this author and content, which is really what we need, and paste it here. And this is going to be the type, right? Now let's finish this builder. It's going to look like this. Now here in the query, I can access these values actually, and I can also destructure them by saying author and content. So once I have these variables, I can just go ahead and create my query. So the URL for my query is going to be post, which is what we have here. So I can just copy and paste it here. This is the endpoint. Now here I need to specify the method. In this case, it's going to be post and the body. The body is going to be basically what we are getting here. So instead of destructuring, maybe I can just say body and passing all as body, or because they have the same name, I don't even need to specify it. It's going to be grabbed automatically. It's also worth noting, guys, that you can change the headers here if you need for this post request. We have also other methods like transform response. So if you want to change the format from the response, you can do so inside this transform response. Okay, so yeah, another thing to keep in mind if you really want to do that, RTK query is very flexible with us. Nice, so we are passing this. Nice, so this should be working. So let's go ahead and hit save. And now we should be able to use this mutation, create post mutation. Okay, so by using this hook, we should be able to do that. Now, we need another screen, right? Because we don't want to be creating, to-dos in the same screen here. So what we can do is inside tabs, I can go ahead and create a new file called create to-do.tsx, hit enter, and now let's export the full function create to-do. Now this is going to return a JSX element, and we are going to return for now just a view. from my components, maybe we can copy this modal that we have here. I'm going to copy this content and paste it here and come back to the modal and copy these styles. Maybe we need them. Put them down here. Okay, I need to import style sheet from React Native. All right. Okay, I need to import my text from my components. All right, and I don't need this. Oops, I guess I need this. So status bar is going to come from Expo, I believe. Yeah, Expo status bar. And then based on the platform from React Native, yeah, we can change the color. Cool, so we have this create to do. Now we need some way to go to this modal, right? Now, this create to do is a new screen, so we need to define it in the layout of the tabs. Cool. So yeah, let's create. Okay, so now from the index, we can have a button to create a new to do. Actually, what we can do here, I think, is just go to the layout. Inside the index, we can have some options here like header right, and this is going to create a button, I think. So I'm going to just use a regular button and give it a title, test, and then comma, hit save. Of course, we are not seeing anything here. Because I have this header shown equal to false, I guess I'm going to remove it so that we can see this test button here. Now, something that I just realized is that I have this create to do screen as a tab here, and I want that as a stack screen. So I think what I can do here is actually just drag these to the app and move. All right, we should be able to just keep it there. And once we are able to do that inside this button, what I can do is just try to navigate using the link. So if you are not familiar with link, if you go to the missing screen, you can see that we have this link here, which is a component that we can use to navigate. So yeah, I can actually just copy or to use this link inside my header here. So let's try to do that. I'm going to say link, and this is going to come from Expo router, right? And this link is going to wrap. Oops. This link is going to wrap this button. So yeah, I can say as child, and then I need an href, and we want to travel to the create to do screen. Cool, right? All right, let me delete this, hit save. Let's click test. Okay, and we are able to do that. Okay, so this is working, but now we are kind of trapped in this modal screen. Let's go to my to-do. This is going to be the create to-do screen. Sorry, create post screen. Okay, and now we need maybe a link from Expo router. And here we can say href. I don't know how we can go back actually. I can say maybe tabs. And inside this, we can have a button from React Native that has a title close. Hit save. And yeah, so this is going to be as child. And we should be able to go back. So let's hit close. Okay, so this is working fine. Yep, and we are seeing data. Okay, so this is working fine. We can close. Cool. So what I want to do now is actually change my test to add to do and hit save. Sorry, it's going to be post. I keep calling it to do, add post. So yeah, when we are in this create post screen, we don't need to worry about the state or anything like that. We can actually go ahead and use our hook, use mutation, use create post mutation. Now use create post mutation, it's going to return a couple things here. Now this hook is actually going to return an array instead of an object. And the first thing that we're going to get here is going to be the update post mutation, and then the result. This is the second item in this array, the result and the update post query. Okay. Already, very nice. So once we have this update post function or hook, we can simply use it as we would do with a function normally. So if I call update post, you can see that this is expecting some arguments, which is the author and the content. Now, let's create some inputs to handle this state, right? Now, of course, at this point, we need to save these variables somewhere. We are going to inevitably use a state. So what I can do here is actually maybe instead of creating an input and a button to create these to do. So at this point, what I can do is actually just create maybe a function called handle create. And actually, this is not going to be update. This is going to be create. We can name it as we want, actually. Handle create post. And this function is going to just call this create post whenever we call it. And we are going to pass the author, which is going to be Alberto. And this is going to be, and now we can pass content. And this is going to be just a random content. Okay, hit save. And yeah, this should be working. Now, from the result, we can render some things here. Like, for example, let's say result dot. We can grab the data. We can also say result is loading. And actually, a cool thing to do here is that we can destructure this in here by saying is loading, is error, is or just grabbing the data. Okay, so if I hit save, we have this at our disposition here. Very nice. Now let's create a button here, and this button is going to be in charge of on press handle create post. And of course we need a title, which is going to be create post. So let me just copy this here quickly and paste it here, hit save. So if I create post, I should be able to access these variables as well as the data and all that. So let's go ahead and add some validation. So for example, if it's loading, what I can do is have just a text. I'm going to copy this one and I'm going to save is creating. And then after it's created, if we have data, in this case, I'm going to say data, then if you remember, this should return the new post. So if we have data, these data should be typed as well, as you can see here, post type or undefined, which is great. So if we have data, we can simply say new post equal to, and I'm going to put here data dot content as well as maybe date equal to data dot created at. Hit save. So this is very nice. We are able to access these variables. If we have an error, we can have a simple error screen as well. So let's say error, oops, is error. And here we can say like something went wrong. Hit save. Nice. So let's go ahead and test this out. I'm going to create a post. Okay, and that was super quick. We have this new post and we have the date. Now the date, of course, we can format it in a better way by saying new date, passing this date, and then say to locale string. It's safe. Let's create a new one. Okay, so we have the date and the time. Now if I close this, you can see that we are loading some data here. And after loading data, we are able to see everything. So let's go ahead and create a new post. Create a new post, close, and nothing happened. Create a new post. I'm going to create a couple posts here. You can see that the time is changing, so these are new posts. And when I close this screen, nothing is happening. So why, if we are using RTK, if we are not getting updates on every single component that is accessing this data? Well, it's important to realize that we actually need to let RTK query know that we want to refetch or we want to revalidate this data once we made a mutation, for example. And the way we do that is very simple. So if we go to the post, after the reducer path, we can declare some tag types. And this is an array of strings, very simple, just to identify queries. So for example, I can have something like create, and this is my tag, right? Now, why we need these tags? Well, these tags are optional. We weren't using it. That's why we weren't revalidating the data after a mutation. But we need to define them if we want to use caching and invalidation. So because we are caching, we are not fetching this every time, right? So we need to specifically invalidate this data when we are posting something new. So what we want to do when we post something new, find post. That's why we need to give find all post a tag. So I'm going to create this provides tags option. And then in here, I can use the one that I already declared, like create. So this is going to provide this tag, which means when I affect that tag, because this endpoint is providing this tag, this is going to invalidate the data, which is going to tell Redux to refetch this. Okay. So after my query, I can say invalidate tags, and the tags that I want to invalidate is going to be create. Does that make sense? So when I create a mutation, automatically we are invalidating the data that we had before. So we need to invalidate the create tag. So find all post is going to run when we create, or we could also have something like update, right? Okay, you are getting it. Hit save. We are loading data. At this point, we have a lot of random stuff here. Let's add a new post. We need to actually render something different here. And what I'm thinking is that on the list, in my home screen index here, instead of rendering the content and the author, I can just render for now because we are just testing and developing the created at. Okay, hit save. Now the created at, of course, this is ugly. We can use this here. So let's go back to the index and change this to have a better format so that we can understand it. Created at, now instead of data, it's to do. Hit save. Okay, and we have the time, right? Maybe I can just show the time. Hit save. Okay, and there we have it. So yeah, this is working fine. Let's create a new entry, create post, and close. We are loading data because this is the first time that we're coming back. Let's go ahead. Okay, so we have the invalid data at the beginning. That's okay. Create a new post. Let's create like 3 posts. Close. Okay, now we are loading data every time that we are creating a mutation. If I close, we are loading again. Cool, right? So of course, you are seeing that we are loading the data every time. But a cool thing about this is that if we go back to this, instead of making this to take 3 seconds, which is a lot of time, we can simply put it like that. And then what we can do as well, I guess for now this is okay. And now at this point, I'm going to delete this dummy to do that we had before. And like I mentioned before, because at this point I want to reload my server, I'm going to lose all my data. Okay, so let's reload the app. Okay, and we don't have data, so let's create a new entry. There we have it. Now, actually, when we are creating a post, just to see that we are creating a post, maybe we can do here this this set timeout, right? Of 3 seconds, maybe 2 seconds, and put this inside. Okay, we need to reload the server. Okay, it's working. Let's reload the app just to make sure that everything is working. Okay, create a new post. Is creating, as you can see. And once we create the post, we are able to get the data. And then we should close the window, right? We can close the window. And it doesn't really matter that we are in other screen. We are handling everything in one line of code, basically. And just this handler. Of course, at this point, we are just hard coding everything, but that's okay. And yeah, so at this point we have 2, but let's go ahead and create like, yeah, it's creating. Let's create like 2 more and 1 more. Close. And as you can see, this is so quick that we didn't really realize. And the cool thing about this is that this is in sync with my database, with my server. And if everything goes wrong, we are sure that we are going to get the error and show it to the user. Okay, so this is pretty nice. This is the power of Redux. And now let's go ahead and keep improving this, this post service that we have here. Now at this point, guys, you should be very, very ready to integrate your mutations. Like this is for creating. Maybe now we can update, which is going to be cool, right? So let's go ahead and duplicate this 2 times. And this is create, update, and delete post. So this is going to be a mutation as well, updating. Now, when we are updating, if you remember, we need to pass the ID, and that's the only thing that we need to pass. Cool, right? So when we are updating, I'm going to say that we are going to get an ID of type number. And then I can simply say post, but at this point, I need to pass this ID as a parameter. So my URL is going to change to be something like equal ID equal, and then I'm going to pass the ID. So here I'm going to say ID, and I need to change this to be something like this. All right. Now if you see, we can find ID because we are grabbing this body. So from here, I'm going to just grab the ID like that, and we don't need the body. And actually, guys, I'm messing things up here because we need the body. So I'm going to just Control C because we also need the author and content. It could be that we want to change the author, but I don't think so. Maybe just the ID equal to number. And this is going to be what we can access here. So I'm going to access the ID and the content. And then in the body, I'm going to say that I want to pass content to be equal to the content. All right, this is how it looks. And then we need to do whatever I had before. So to pass a parameter, we need to say ID equal to, and then we can say ID. Okay, so this is how we pass a parameter. I think this should be working. I don't remember if we need to have a slash here, but let's go ahead and hit save for this mutation. So we are going to be updating the content, and this updated post, it's going to return, let's go and check it out. It's going to return the new updated post, right? After the DB is updated. So we are good with this type here. Nice. So this is going to invalidate the tag of update. And this is going to invalidate the tag of delete. And we don't have these tags because we didn't declare them. That's why this is an array. So I'm going to say update and delete. So every time we perform one of these operations, we are going to invalidate this query. So Redux is going to be forced to fetch this data every time that we create, delete, or update. Okay, makes sense? Nice. Okay, so this is for updating a post. We are updating the content, then invalidate data. Cool. Now for deleting, we just need the ID from the parameters. Okay. So just need the ID, and this is going to return a string. Okay, so let's go back. This is going to return a string, and we just need to pass the ID of type number. And we can go ahead and delete this. Cool. Now at this point, cool. So yeah, in here, what we can do is actually just say that we are going to get a number, and this number is going to be the ID. So I can just grab it in this query, and we don't need a body. We just need to pass the ID into the URL like we did before. So let's copy this and paste it here. Okay. And yeah, we're invalidating delete post. Cool. So hit save. This is how we can handle these kind of operations. And yeah, now we need to export these hooks, like use delete and use update. Hit save, and now we have these hooks that we can use across our application. It doesn't really matter where. Nice. So yeah, and now that I'm checking, guys, actually this is going to be a put request, and this is going to be a delete request. And one more thing is that I just checked that this should be like this as well here. Okay, so my bad. Yeah, let's hit save, and this should be working. This is the URL. We have the method put post delete, and yeah, let's try this out. Now let's do the delete. I think this is the easier one. So let's go to the to-dos. We are actually, let's go to the index. Here we are iterating over each to-do. So this to-do is a text right now, but what we can do is make it maybe a view, and this view is going to look like this. Of course, this is a good time to abstract this component, but for now, let's just create a button from React Native that has a title, delete. Okay, and on press, we want to delete. So yeah, we are going to need to use the delete. So this is going to return an array. Remember that the first is going to be delete post function, and then we can destructure is loading, is data and success, for example, or error. Now, if you pay attention, we are getting some things here. So this data delete post is going to be a string. So maybe we can rename this to be delete post data. This is how you can rename and avoid collision. Okay, nice. So yeah, now we can refer to delete post data when we get the data from delete post. Now from here, I can just call directly delete post, and this is going to take a number if you pay attention here. So the number is the ID, and this ID, it's going to be from this to do. Okay, so let's copy paste here, and that's it. Now we are getting some errors because the key is not working. Okay, let's paste it here. Okay, and we're good to go. So let's go ahead and try this out. I'm going to delete the first one, second one, and this is working. And now to show you guys that this is working, maybe we can have some console, some logs here in the server. Let's go back to the delete and let's say console log deleted. This is the current data, and then just put the data here, my DB, my entire DB. Okay, let's restart the server. Let's try to delete. Okay, deleted. Of course, we didn't have anything because I restarted the server. So let's create a couple posts here. It's creating, and then close, delete. Okay, deleted. This is the current data. Okay, at this point we have two. Delete. Okay, so this is a little late because because we are splicing here, so we should have this console log down here. Yeah, so let's just try to run this again. Let's check out the server logs, add a post, create post, creating post. Let's add maybe 3 at this time, and close. Okay, there we have them. Now let's delete one, and we have 2, and we can delete another one, and we only have 1. Cool, so this is working. Great. Let's add 1 post maybe. And yeah, so this is how quickly, guys, we are handling this. And the cool thing about this is that we can access this data and update every single component that is accessing this query, because we are invalidating this query every time we delete a post, every time we do something, right? And we can access this data as well. And this data is going to be the string that we're getting, which is the message deleted successfully. And we can do the same for updating. So let's create a button for updating. And of course, this is going to be very easy at this point. I'm just going to duplicate this, and I'm going to use the delete post mutation. Sorry, this is going to be use update post mutation, and this is going to be update. So at this point, it's very easy, right? Update. Cool. At this point, this is very easy because we already know the pattern of how this works. So I'm just going to copy this and say update post, and whenever we want to update a post, this is going to take the ID of the post and the content. So let's say ID is going to be equal to todo.id, and the other thing is going to be the content. So this is going to be updated. Maybe an emoji so that we can see it easier. And at this point, we should render not only the date, but we also need to render the content, right? So that we are able to see that the post was updated. Okay, so let's close this. We have a couple of invalid dates Yeah, because this is not a date. Okay, hit save. Random content, and let's update a post. Update it. Great, how easy was that? That is amazing. Let's create a new one. Okay, creating, close. Okay, now we have some errors there because of the IDs, but that's okay. Actually, what we can do is maybe go to the backend and handle the IDs in a more proper way, not just by adding to the length, but just maybe just creating a random number saying math.random, right? Let's try to restart to see if that works. Okay, let's reload the application. Okay, add a post, create post, it's creating. Okay, there we have it. So we can close. There we have it. Let's create maybe a couple more. Okay, creating. It's creating. Close. Okay, and that worked. Let's delete the first one. Okay, let's delete another one. Something is wrong here. Oh yeah, the reason why that is not working is because we are parsing int. I think that is changing something, but let's put this back. I guess we can live for now with this error. Maybe you can improve it at home, but yeah, let's just reload. Let's close this. Okay, let's create a couple posts. Let's create another one. Close. Let's update the last one. Okay, and the updated ad changed, right? Let's add a new post. Create post. Okay, close. And there we have it. So this is very cool. Everything is working. We can delete. We can update the other one. And yeah, so I mean, what else we need, right? This is the grand advantage of using Redux RTK query, guys. As you can see, I mean, this is a very simple example. Of course, you may need to change some data, but the advantages of using this and having to abstract every single interaction with the API into this service allows you to have a fully typed API as well as states of everything on the data. So loading states, error, and data actually, right? We can also have some headers, and this is going to keep your code clean. I know that this can seem scary for beginners, but once you have this integrated, like you saw, we added some extra queries super easily, invalidating some things. And yeah, so this is just crash course for beginners, of course, and you can do more things. And if you are wondering how can you do something, I'm sure it's possible with RTK query, and I would encourage you to go to the documentation. And that's it for this lesson, guys. Just to finish with this video, please go to codebeto.dev if you want to support this channel, if you want to support me as a content creator. Go to codewithbeto.dev and check out the courses. I am really sure that they are going to help you a lot to improve in React Native, understanding TypeScript, Redux, and everything you need to get to the next level. If you like this video, if you learned something, please give it a like, subscribe if you haven't already. And otherwise, I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye.